Today, we will witness an extraordinary story of an intellectual debate that will stir both minds and hearts. A 7-year-old Muslim girl from Chile will engage in a profound discussion with an atheist professor about the existence of God. This debate will not be driven by anger or emotion but by simple, sharp logic and undeniable reasoning. At a renowned university in Santiago, Chile, there is a highly respected professor of philosophy named Dr. Esteban Morales. He is known as a sharp thinker and a staunch atheist. Dr. Morales has taught for years that God is merely a concept created by humans. In every lecture, he challenges his students to prove the existence of God, and so far, no one has been able to silence his arguments. But who would have thought that his greatest challenge would come from a little child? In another part of the city, a young Muslim girl named Nayla Fernandez is walking toward the university hall with her father, Kamal Fernandez, a Muslim engineer. Nayla is an exceptionally intelligent child for her age. From a young age, she has been fascinated by questions about the universe, life, and religion. She has grown up in an environment that teaches that Islam is a religion full of knowledge and common sense. That day, her father invited Nayla to attend an open seminar hosted by Dr. Esteban Morales. The seminar was titled, God, Myth, or Reality? Kamal knew that the discussion would be challenging, but he wanted Nayla to witness how science and faith can go hand in hand. The hall was filled with students and intellectuals eager to hear the professor's arguments. Dr. Esteban Morales stepped onto the podium and began his lecture with full confidence. Brothers and sisters, his voice echoed in the room. For centuries, humans have believed in God. But what scientific evidence do we have? None. All of it is just a tradition passed down from generation to generation. Knowledge of the universe does not require the presence of God. If God truly exists, he must be proven through scientific methods, not just belief. The room fell silent. Many nodded in agreement, while others seemed hesitant. After an hour of presenting scientific arguments that denied the existence of God, Dr. Morales issued a challenge. If anyone here can prove to me, using undeniable logic, that God exists, I will admit that I am wrong. No one dared to raise their hand. The students exchanged glances. Some tried to construct arguments in their minds but hesitated, fearing the professor's intellectual prowess. But then, unexpectedly, a small hand was raised. All eyes turned toward a 7-year-old girl sitting in the middle of the hall. Dr. Morales smirked. Well, it seems we have our youngest participant here. What is your name, young one? He asked in a soft but skeptical tone. Nayla stood up straight and answered without hesitation. My name is Nayla Fernandez, Professor. Dr. Morales chuckled. All right, Nayla, do you want to prove that God exists? Nayla nodded confidently. Yes, Professor. And I will do it with a glass of milk. The room buzzed with murmurs. Some students chuckled, thinking this was a child's joke, but Nayla's expression remained calm. Her father smiled proudly from his seat. Dr. Morales raised an eyebrow. Milk? How can a glass of milk prove the existence of God? Nayla gave a slight smile. I will explain, Professor. But first, may I have a glass of milk? Curious, a member of the seminar committee quickly brought a glass of milk from the canteen. Nayla carefully took the glass and held it up for everyone to see. Professor, she began, do you agree that this milk has a very complex composition? It contains protein, calcium, vitamins, and various other nutrients that make it highly beneficial. Dr. Morales nodded. Of course, that is a scientific fact. And do you agree that this milk comes from cows? Dr. Morales nodded again. Yes, milk comes from cows. Nayla smiled. Now, if we analyze this logically, where does this milk come from? From the cow's mammary glands, Dr. Morales answered patiently. Good, Nayla said. Now let's go a step further. Cows produce milk from the food they consume, grass and water. But Professor, have you ever wondered why grass is green, water is clear, and cows consume only these things, yet the milk they produce is white and filled with nutrients? The room fell silent again. Some students looked at the professor with curiosity. Dr. Morales paused for a moment before replying. It is a complex biological process. Nayla nodded. Yes, Professor. But who designed this biological process? How is it that a cow, which has no intellect, produces milk that is perfectly suited for human and animal consumption? If this all happened by chance, then how did such a precise and beneficial process come into existence? Nayla continued. Professor, if you find a glass of milk on your table, you would naturally assume that someone poured it there. It would be impossible to believe that the milk simply appeared by itself. She smiled and continued. If even a simple glass of milk requires someone to pour it, then what about a much more complex biological system? How could something so perfect exist without anyone creating it? This is proof that there is a supreme, intelligent being who designed everything so carefully, and that is what we call God. The room fell silent. No one spoke. Some students began whispering among themselves. For the first time, Dr. Esteban Morales seemed to have no immediate response. Nayla's father watched with pride. His daughter had just presented a simple yet logical argument that wasn't easy to dismiss. Dr. Esteban took a deep breath and finally spoke. Interesting, Nayla? Very interesting. All eyes remained on the professor. For the first time, he appeared to be deep in thought, his usual confidence shaken. A male student in the middle row whispered, Unbelievable. Our professor just got outsmarted by a little girl. The whisper was loud enough for many to hear. Some students chuckled, while others sat in deep contemplation. Dr. Esteban, though visibly unsettled, maintained his composure. He gave a thin smile and said, Nayla, your argument is intriguing. But it still does not prove the existence of God. What you call the miracle of milk is simply a result of natural laws, developed over billions of years through evolution. This is the process of natural selection, not the work of a divine creator. Nayla remained calm. She looked at the professor with eyes full of confidence. Professor, she said, if I give you a set of random letters and ask you to arrange them into a perfect book, how long would it take you? Dr. Esteban chuckled. That depends on how many letters and how complex the book is. But of course, it would take a very long time. Nayla nodded. And if I threw those letters into the air, would they fall in perfect order and form a readable book? The professor shook his head. Of course not. That's impossible. Nayla smiled. Then how can you believe that billions of atoms in the human body, in the universe, and in every living creature arrange themselves perfectly by mere chance? The room fell silent once more. The students who had been laughing earlier now seemed to be reconsidering her words. A lecturer in the back row whispered to his colleague, This child is far too sharp for her age. Dr. Esteban's smile faltered slightly, and his eyes showed a hint of unease. However, he quickly composed himself and asked, Nayla, I understand your reasoning. But I have a question for you. If God truly exists, why is there so much suffering in the world? Why are there wars, poverty, disease, and injustice? If God is all-loving, why does he allow such things to happen? Several people in the audience nodded in agreement. A young woman in the front row whispered, That's a tough question. I wonder how she'll answer it. But Nayla did not hesitate. She looked at the professor with gentle eyes and asked, Professor, have you ever been inside an operating room? Dr. Esteban frowned slightly. Yes, of course. I have seen surgeries being performed in hospitals. Nayla continued, And when a doctor operates on a patient, does the patient feel pain? The professor thought for a moment. Without anesthesia, of course, they feel pain. Nayla nodded. And yet, why does the doctor still perform the surgery, even though it causes pain? Dr. Esteban sighed. Because it is necessary to heal the patient. Nayla smiled. Exactly. It is the same with life, Professor. Sometimes, God allows suffering not because he doesn't care, but because there is a greater purpose behind it, just like a doctor who operates on a patient to cure him. God allows humans to go through trials for a reason. Nayla looked at Dr. Miguel with a gentle but confident gaze. Professor, have you ever seen a parent teaching their child to walk? Dr. Miguel frowned slightly. then nodded. Yes, of course. When a child takes their first steps, do they ever stumble and fall? Nayla continued. Dr. Miguel sighed. Yes, they do. It happens all the time. And do the parents rush to stop them from ever falling again? Do they carry them everywhere so they never have to struggle? Dr. Miguel was silent for a moment before shaking his head. No, they let them try again so they can learn. Nayla smiled. Exactly, Professor. If parents never let go, if they always held their child's hand and never allowed them to make mistakes, the child would never learn to walk on their own. They would remain weak and dependent forever. She let her words settle before continuing. Allah gives us free will, the ability to choose between right and wrong, so that we can learn, grow, and develop wisdom. If He forced us to do only good, we would be no different from programmed machines, with no true purpose or meaning in our actions. The beauty of choosing goodness is that it comes from within, not from force. A hush fell over the room. Some students who had been skeptical now appeared deep in thought. A few exchanged glances, their expressions softening as if something had just clicked in their minds. Even Dr. Miguel, who had been so firm in his stance, seemed momentarily speechless. In the corner of the room, an elderly man stroked his white beard and murmured softly, Subhanallah, this child is very wise. Dr. Esteban, however, was not ready to give up. Crossing his arms, he narrowed his eyes at Nayla. His voice was sharp as he asked, Okay, Nayla, if God exists, why doesn't He show Himself? If I could see Him, touch Him, or talk to Him directly, I would believe in Him. Nayla smiled slightly. Professor, do you have a brain? The room was suddenly filled with murmurs and small laughter. Some students chuckled while covering their mouths. Dr. Esteban let out a short laugh and nodded. Of course, I have a brain, Nayla. But have you ever seen it? She asked innocently. Dr. Esteban's smile faded. He hesitated, and the entire room held its breath, sensing that this was a defining moment. Nayla continued, her voice steady. Have you ever touched it or spoken to it directly? Dr. Esteban remained silent for a long moment, deep in thought. Finally, he exhaled and admitted in a low voice. No, I have never seen my own brain. But I know it exists because I can think and function as a human being. Nayla smiled triumphantly. That's how we know that God exists. We may not be able to see Him directly, but we can feel His presence in every heartbeat and in the air we breathe. His existence is as real as the thoughts in our minds and the life flowing through our veins. Just like the brain, we don't need to see Him to know He is there. The room erupted in applause. Some students who had been skeptical now seemed to nod in agreement, while others wiped away tears. Dr. Esteban sat quietly, his gaze thoughtful. For the first time in his life, he did not have a ready answer. He looked at Nayla with newfound respect. But before he could speak again, a voice from the back of the room cut through the applause. Professor, don't let a little girl beat you. It's just a word game, the voice said coldly. All eyes turned toward the man standing near the entrance. He was dressed in a black suit, his expression serious and unyielding. He was one of Dr. Esteban's colleagues, a well-known scientist and one of the most vocal atheists at the university, Dr. Miguel Ramirez. The atmosphere, which had begun to settle, became tense again. Nayla turned her gaze to the man, her eyes filled with quiet confidence. She knew the debate was far from over. There were still many questions to be answered. Dr. Miguel stepped forward, his eyes sharp with skepticism. All right, little one, he said, folding his arms. You seem very confident in your arguments. But before we continue, let me ask you something. Do you believe that Islam is a religion of love? Nayla nodded without hesitation. Of course, Professor. Islam is a religion of love, mercy, and justice. Dr. Miguel scoffed. Love and mercy? His tone was laced with disbelief. Then explain something to me. If Islam is truly a religion of peace, why do we see so much violence and bloodshed committed in its name? How do you justify wars fought under the banner of your religion? If your faith is so pure, why do people use it to justify hurting others? A murmur spread through the audience. Some students nodded in agreement with the question, while others waited in anticipation. Nayla remained silent for a moment. Then she took a deep breath and spoke with calm clarity. Professor, do you believe that knives are useful? Dr. Miguel frowned. What do you mean? Knives, Nayla repeated. Do you believe they are useful tools? Dr. Miguel hesitated, then nodded. Yes, of course. Knives are used for cooking, for cutting things. They are essential in everyday life. Nayla smiled slightly. But Professor, can knives also be used to harm people? Dr. Miguel's expression shifted. He seemed to realize where this conversation was going. If someone uses a knife to commit a crime, Nayla continued, should we blame the knife, or should we blame the person who misused it? The room fell silent again. A few students exchanged glances, some whispering about how strong the little girl's argument was. Dr. Miguel pressed his lips together, but Nayla wasn't finished. Professor, there are people who misuse science to create weapons of mass destruction. Should we blame science itself for the destruction it causes? Dr. Miguel exhaled sharply but did not immediately answer. Nayla continued, Islam is a religion that teaches peace, but there are people who distort its teachings for their own selfish purposes, just as there are people who misuse science, technology, and even politics for the wrong reasons. The problem is not with Islam itself, but with how human beings choose to use or misuse it. The room remained still. Some students who had initially doubted her words now seemed deep in thought. A few nodded, seemingly convinced. Dr. Miguel took a deep breath, as if he was about to counter her argument, but then he paused. His expression changed, no longer filled with arrogance, but with something else. Something like contemplation. Finally, he spoke again. All right, he said, his voice quieter than before. I understand your logic. But I have one last question for you. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. If God truly exists, why doesn't he prevent evil from happening in the first place? Why does he allow humans to choose evil at all? Nayla's gaze softened, her voice gentle yet firm. Professor, she asked, have you ever seen a parent teaching their child to walk? Dr. Miguel frowned slightly. Yes, of course. And so, the conversation began again. But this time, the tension in the room had shifted. The skepticism was still there, but something else had taken root as well, a quiet, undeniable curiosity. Do they always hold the child so he doesn't fall? Dr. Miguel shook his head. No, they let the child try by himself. Nayla smiled. Why did they let the child fall? Dr. Miguel fell silent. He seemed to think for a moment, then said, Because if the child doesn't fall, he will never learn to stand and walk properly. Nayla thought that was how Allah educates. He didn't create humans like robots who have no choice. He gave us the freedom to choose between good and evil because only with that choice can we truly understand the value of goodness itself. Finances were becoming more silent. The students who had previously seemed doubtful now began to show different expressions. Some looked amazed, others thoughtful. But Dr. Miguel didn't want to lose. He spoke again. But Nayla, if God is indeed full of love, why did he create hell? Why does he punish people who do not believe in him? The question made some students nod in agreement. This was one of the questions often asked by atheists in theological debates. Nayla stayed calm. She looked at Dr. Miguel and said softly, Professor, are you a good lecturer? Dr. Miguel smiled thinly. Of course. And do you give exams to your students? Dr. Miguel nodded. Yes, it is part of the education system. If there are students who do not study, do not try, and do not pass the exam, do you still give them perfect marks? Dr. Miguel shook his head. Of course not. If they do not study, then they do not deserve good grades. Nayla smiled. So is life, Professor. God has given us exams, and he has given us all the instructions we need to pass. But if someone chooses to ignore all those instructions, is it fair if he still gets the same heaven as people who have struggled to do good? Dr. Miguel fell silent. Some students who were initially skeptical now seemed to begin to understand the essence of Nayla's argument. A female student in the back row suddenly said, "Yes. Oh my goodness, that makes sense." Dr. Miguel took a deep breath. For the first time in this debate, he didn't seem to have an answer ready. He looked at Nayla with an expression that was hard to explain. There was awe, confusion, and signs that he was starting to consider something he had never thought about before. But before he could say anything, another student suddenly stood up. "I still have a question for Nayla," he said loudly. The atmosphere became tense again. This debate was not over. The room was still filled with tension as everyone waited for Nayla's answer to the question from the student who had just stood up. A young man with curly hair and a casual shirt seemed to be gripping his microphone tightly. His name was Fernando. "I admit that your arguments are very logical," he said confidently. "But there is one thing that bothers me. Allah is merciful and just, but how can He forgive sins? How can He allow us to enter heaven after all the wrong we've done?" This question was often raised in theological debates, and now Nayla had to give an answer that could touch the logic and hearts of everyone in the room. Nayla smiled softly and then asked Fernando, "Have you ever been in love?" Fernando frowned, not expecting his question to be answered with a question. "Of course. What is the connection? When you fall in love with someone, do you want them to love you because they really know you and understand your heart, or do you want them to love you just because they are forced, or because there is no other choice?" Fernando was silent. He began to understand the direction of Nayla's thoughts, but he still let the conversation continue. If God appeared directly to everyone, there would be no room for faith and freedom of choice. Everyone would believe just because they had no other choice. But God wants us to love and believe in Him with a sincere heart, not because we are forced by irrefutable evidence. The atmosphere in the room shifted from tension to deep contemplation. The students, who were previously skeptical, now looked thoughtful. Dr. Miguel, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. "So do you think God wants humans to choose Him with their hearts, not because they are forced?" he asked softly. Nayla nodded. "God gives us the freedom to seek the truth. He has left many signs within us, in the universe, and in His books, but the choice to see those signs is still in our hands." Dr. Miguel took a deep breath. "I have spent years of my life searching for answers, trying to prove that God does not exist, but your argument today made me think again." Some students looked shocked. A famous atheist professor was beginning to doubt her own beliefs. This was not something that happened often. Fernando sat back in his chair, his face no longer showing resistance, but more confusion. It seemed like his heart was fighting with his own mind. Dr. Span, who had been debating Nayla from the start, now smiled a little. "I didn't expect this discussion would make me think more than arguing." Nayla smiled. "Islam is not just about debate, Professor. Islam is about the heart, about our relationship with Allah, and about how we use our minds to find the truth." The whole room fell silent. No one wanted to ask questions, not because they were afraid, but because they were contemplating something that they might have ignored. Maybe there was something bigger than what they could understand with logic alone. When the debate ended, many students approached Nayla. Some wanted to chat further, others just wanted to say thank you for opening their eyes to a new perspective. Fernando, who had challenged Nayla, finally said, "I don't know if I can believe in God right away, but I will start looking for the answer more seriously." Nayla smiled warmly. "Searching for the truth is a beautiful journey, Fernando. I pray that you find it." Dr. Miguel looked pensive as he left the room, his face no longer showing the intellectual arrogance that had been there at the start of the debate. Something had changed. Something that might make him rethink his beliefs. In the meantime, he walked out of the room calmly. He had done his part, conveying the truth gently, lovingly, and with irrefutable logic. And like the glass of milk he had used as an analogy earlier, the truth is always clear. Only those who truly want to see it will understand how sacred the truth is, a message about courage in conveying the truth, about gentleness in preaching, and about the importance of using reason and heart in seeking answers. Hopefully, we can all learn from this story and get closer to the truth. See you in the next inspiring story.